Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Erin. I'm a registered dietitian. And if you are new here, this channel is all about providing you with great, solid, evidence-based, factual nutrition advice, along with practical tips that you can apply to your everyday life. My mission in my practice, which is New You Nutrition, as well as on all of my social media channels and just in life, is to help people break the cycle of dieting. It is a toxic cycle, and teach them to nourish their bodies well. So I'm bringing you that factual information, that practical guidance on how to actually implement good nutrition into your life without all of the crap that diet culture tries to feed you. And today's topic is actually a bit of a request. So today we are talking about what to do when something or someone tries to sabotage your health goals. This is something that I talk about sometimes around the holiday season, just because our schedules seem to be different and we're eating differently. But now that we're kind of leading into spring and summertime, at least at the time that I'm recording this, which lends itself to vacations and cookouts and family reunions and things like that. Now that hopefully this pandemic is somewhat behind us, those things are starting to resume, and they could very well get in your way. I do want to touch on, before we get into the meat of our conversation today, that I want to be explicitly clear in that none of the foods that I'm going to talk about today are going to really have any moral value, right? And probably one of the biggest lies and biggest, honestly, injustices that diet culture serves us is that it teaches us that certain foods are good and certain foods are bad. And what they really mean by that is that some foods are more nutrient dense, meaning that they have more nutrition per calorie. Than other foods, which may have the same number of calories, but less vitamins, minerals, fiber, etc., per calorie. So a key example of that is that I'd like to use with people is an apple versus a cookie, right? And I'm not picking on apples and cookies. It's just kind of a nice, tangible example that the apple and the cookie probably have roughly the same number of calories. And honestly, most of those calories in both cases, the apple and the cookie, come from carbohydrates, right? So they're kind of, in that sense, very similar products. That said, this apple is going to have loads of fiber, loads of vitamins, loads of minerals, whereas the cookie has pretty much just sugar, very little vitamin, mineral, or fiber content. Now, does that mean that one of them is morally superior? No. Does that mean that you could or should always choose the more nutrient dense apple? No. I'm very much an advocate that whatever your favorite foods are, so long as you are not allergic to them, they can fit into your diet, right? Regardless of what your goals are. You can eat cookies and still lose weight. You can eat cookies and still manage your diabetes, right? These are all things that are permissible and should be part of a very healthy diet, right? That is okay. But when people are trying to manage certain healthcare conditions, they may want to change their habits. And a lot of what I work with my patients one-on-one is counseling them in baby steps towards making those smaller changes. So those can be changes like maybe eating fewer cookies, but eating more fruit. They can also be changes like eating more vegetables and eating out less. There's a huge spectrum, right? Every patient's going to be so different. Every person's going to be so different, and their goals are going to be different. So what your goals are will be unique to you. However, when you live with other people, when you travel, when you spend time with friends or family, or have events or parties or gatherings, the routine and the habits that you are working towards may be difficult to come by, or even in some cases directly sabotaged, right? So let's talk about a couple of examples of when this might happen, right? I mentioned the holidays. So, big holiday family gatherings when food that maybe we don't eat all of the time is available. Maybe there's more alcohol than we normally have. Other things that can get in the way. would be, travel. So again, it's slightly different, right? Because, traveling, you're out of your routine. You may or may not have access to a kitchen. You may or may not be eating out. That may or may not be the point of part of your travel. And even in the act of traveling, right? So even if you are going to, I don't know, a beach house where you will have a kitchen and things like that, if you were driving to and from, you may be at the mercy of kind of whatever fast food is on the way there. So those kinds of things can disrupt. Or if your plane is held up and you weren't necessarily planning on having dinner at your layover stop, well, now you are, and you kind of have to deal with it that way. Other things that can get in the way, and this is where it gets a little bit trickier, aren't those kind of bigger or like one-off type of events. It's more of dealing with your nutrition goals and your behavior change in the context of living with other people, or at least spending significant time with other people who are maybe not on the same journey as you. So by that, I mean, spouses, kids, anyone who maybe their eating habits are just different than yours, but their eating habits involve foods that maybe you enjoy and are kind of trying to get away from, right? Again, there is no moral value in cookies, right? But if you don't have cookies in the house, you're less likely to eat cookies, right? But if your kids or your husband or whoever it is has cookies in the house, you may be more inclined to kind of dabble into them for the sheer fact that they are there, right? It's not a moral, like, this is good, this is bad, but they're there and you're going to eat them. So we will kind of talk through those different scenarios and just some tips that I have learned over the years as to how to handle them. So kind of going in order, talking about those events or kind of one-off experiences. It depends on the event and who all's going to be there and kind of what the food situation is going to be. But very often you can get through those types of events without really getting that off track. Anytime you were going anywhere, I usually recommend, I think probably the biggest mistake I see people make when it comes to events, whether it is like Christmas dinner or a cookout or a family reunion, what have you, any event where there is going to be food, a lot of people either are looking forward to that food so much that they don't want to eat beforehand so that they're make sure that they're hungry when they get there, or they're so scared that they're going to overindulge that they try to preemptively starve themselves before they go to the event. And neither are a good situation, right? So whether you are, just not eating because you want to make sure you're hungry when you get to the event, or you are not eating because you're afraid you're going to overdo it at the event, both are setting you up for failure, right? So the biggest mistake I see people make is just not eating before that event. And my recommendation to anyone is eat before the event, right? Typically, these things are like late afternoon into the evening. So you have a whole day of nutrition that you still need to hit. And you are actually going to do much, much better in terms of not overindulging if you are well fed when you get there. Right. Again, I think approaching food and really anything from like a scarcity mindset of like, it will never be here again. And whether that scarcity mindset is truly like, it's Christmas, I don't get these foods all the time, or it's a scarcity of like, these are hot dogs, I'm not supposed to have them, but because they're here and it's this one time, I'm going to go nuts. Right. It can be a real scarcity or it can be a mental scarcity. Both are going to trigger that notion to overdo it. So what I recommend is, again, try rationalize with your own brain. If you can, remind yourself that these are just hot dogs, right? I have the capacity to go to the store and buy these hot dogs on my own and make them. And that is permissible. That is not immoral. And that is fine. And I honestly encourage you to do that, because the more you allow yourself to eat different foods, the more you ease up on that mental restriction of what you should and should not be eating, the more freedom you are going to feel and the more in control you are going to feel, because you are giving yourself permission. right? That mental restriction is what leads to the binging, is what leads to overdoing it. And then there's the other facet of that, of just the true physical hunger, right? If you have starved yourself either all day that day or all day the previous day for fear of going overboard, and I'm doing air quotes if anybody's just listening to this, you probably know well enough by now to know where they are. If you have starved yourself before this event, you are going to go in there like someone who hasn't seen food in 3 days, and you're going to overdo it, and you're going to be bloated, and you're going to be uncomfortable. My biggest recommendation is eat before you go, whether it is out to dinner, out to brunch, or to a family cookout, what have you. Eat before you go. Try to eat a vegetable earlier in the day if you can. Try to eat a fruit earlier in the day if you can. Drink plenty of water earlier in the day. Make sure you get a protein earlier in the day. Make sure you get a whole grain earlier in the day. Fruits, veg, water, grains. That's it. Protein too, if you can get protein in. That will set you up to not go overboard at whatever this event is. Now, if it is something truly sacred, such as, Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinner, those are our big holidays here in the US. But I mean, Easter's coming up too. That's another big one. If these are things that you really just don't get all the time, then just enjoy them. It's one day. Honestly, most of the time it's not even a full day. It's one meal. That is not going to throw you off track. What will throw you off track is thinking that you have blown it and then giving up for a week. That will set you back for sure. But giving yourself the grace, so you know what? This is Easter. I'm going to enjoy this ham. And these are things that I don't eat all the time, but I'm looking forward to this. My family is here. Enjoy it. Don't stress about it. Just enjoy it. And then just get back on track the next day, the very next day. Don't weigh yourself. That's another big thing, is do not weigh yourself to see how much weight you gained, because you did not. It is impossible to gain a pound of fat in a day. What you have really gained is water weight, probably from all of the salt that you ate, and that will regulate itself right back down. So enjoy it. Don't weigh yourself. Just get back on track. So that's what to do for holidays and events and things like that. If you are traveling, it can get a little bit trickier, right? Sometimes you just don't have the control you would like. If you can, pack snacks, right? Depending on your mode of travel, things like fruit or vegetables may not be in your snack routine, and that's okay. The little tins of nuts or even bags of nuts can be really good. Things like Cliff bars or any type of nutrition or protein bar can be good. Protein shakes actually don't need to be kept cold. The pre-made ones, they taste better if they're cold, but they don't have to be. So that can be another option as well. If you're able to pack things like, celery and carrot sticks or broccoli or bell peppers or anything like that, those are great snack options to just have, especially if you're in the car, kind of packing a cooler, pack a couple of sandwiches. They can be like just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but that's still going to give you more nutrition than, say, a burger or chicken fingers or whatever. And then just kind of do the best you can. Again, you may just kind of have to call that one meal a wash, but keep in mind, this is one meal out of, thousands that you're going to eat in your lifetime. That is okay. It is okay if one meal is off kilter. And same goes for traveling. If you're traveling to a destination where you're not going to be doing a lot of cooking, you're going to be doing a lot of eating out. That may be kind of the point of your of your vacation, right? Is to enjoy the foods that you don't always get. What I will say is that when you can, try to control the meals that you can. So if that means, breakfast every day, if you're able to eat, some yogurt and some granola and some fruit and kind of get your nutrients in that way, and then the rest of the day kind of just is up in the air, well, that's fine. You still did the best you could with the one meal that you could. Let's say you go out for breakfast and you're maybe more in control of lunch, make yourself a sandwich or something like that if you can. Again, the same snack options that I just mentioned apply here. So you can, if you have like a hotel mini fridge or anything like that, getting some protein shakes, getting some, maybe carrots or some type of fruit that you can have on hand, even the little like fruit cups that don't necessarily have to be refrigerated. Those can be a really good option, peanut butter, bananas, Cliff Bars, anything like that. That gets you a good bit of nutrition while also kind of keeping you on track as best you can. And if anyone is interested, if you fill out the contact form on my website, I'll link it before I post the video. I have a snack list that I can send you of different options. Also things like, cheese sticks, deli meats, just trying to think off the cuff of what else is on there. I think hard boiled eggs are on there. So those will all be things obviously that need refrigerating. But again, if you have so much as a mini fridge or even a cooler that you can utilize, then that would be a good way to go. And again, keep in mind, like, this is 1 week. It's more than one meal, but it's 1 week. It's meant to be enjoyed, and just get back on track when you get home. Don't feel like you have to compensate for anything. Just simply get back on track. That's it. And then the last thing to kind of go over, and this was a little bit more delicate, right? Because this is when we're talking about those, friends, family, spouses, what have you, people that you either live with or spend significant time with, or a lot of people, one I hear a lot is coworkers, whether it's coworkers or like your office just has like sponsored lunches brought in every now and then. Those kinds of things, to where people are bringing food that you didn't necessarily want, but feel either then obligated to eat, or you eat just because it's there, right? Kind of how to navigate those situations. And those can be a little touchy, right? Depending on what it is. Obviously, if your office is having sponsored lunches, you can't tell them to just stop doing that, right? Or honestly, even if like your coworkers are bringing in treats for everybody, you can't really tell them not to do that, right? That's not an appropriate solution. Excuse me. So what can you do? One is you can kind of give yourself permission. Like I just said, cookies can be a part of your everyday. Even if your everyday goal is to lose weight, it is still possible. That said, if you find yourself just kind of like more in the cookies than you want to be, bring yourself other snacks, right? And kind of make it kind of the way you did when you were a little kid, right? Be like, okay, well, did I eat my snacks before I go in for another cookie? Right? That can be one tactic. Another tactic is to use something like a hunger scale. And again, I will link one for you guys just to kind of see the visual effects of a hunger scale. But a hunger scale is basically just a scale from 1 to 10. 1 is like starving, famished, like about to pass out, really need food fast. And 10 is like that, like post Thanksgiving meal, absolutely stuffed, maybe need to lay down and take a nap. And what we want to do is try to avoid getting, of course, to the extremes, right? So we want to avoid getting so hungry that we're famished, but we also want to avoid getting so stuffed that we're uncomfortable. Where we really want to stay as best possible is between like a 3 to like a 7, right? So once you get to a 3, you want to start thinking about, what am I going to eat? And then when you get to a 7, you definitely want to stop so that you're not getting overly full. So one thing you can do is kind of check in with yourself and be like, am I hungry or am I bored? Am I hungry, or do I just know the cookies are there? And if the answer is you're truly hungry, then we kind of default to, okay, well, did I eat my snacks? Right? And if the answer is no, then, well, is there another snack that maybe I want? And you don't necessarily have, you can give yourself snack options, right? So I usually recommend packing like a salty, a crunchy, a sweet, and a creamy. Those are kind of like the 3 or the 4 main kind of textures when it comes to foods, as well as flavoring. So people, when they are wanting something to snack on, they typically either want it salty or sweet. And then they typically even within salty and sweet, they typically want either something crunchy or creamy. So kind of bring yourself options that meet all of those, right? So an example of like a salty crunchy maybe is popcorn or something along those lines. A salty But smooth or creamy maybe is something like peanut butter, right? You got like a little bit of salt, a little bit of sweetness, but a little bit of salt and kind of that creamy texture, right? A example of a sweet and creamy maybe is something like yogurt, or a sweet and crunchy maybe something like fruit, like an apple or something like that. That's got a little bit more kind of give to it. So those are just kind of some options to think about. When you are planning your snacks, and when you're kind of thinking, okay, am I hungry, am I bored, what do I actually need to feel satisfied? And a lot of times it actually comes down to flavor and texture over actual food. So that's certainly something to kind of play with when you're planning your meals as well as your snacks, and that may kind of just help keep you out of those cookies because you're satisfied and you're just not even thinking about food. When it is at home, it is a little bit more challenging. Because sometimes we have family members that insist on keeping certain foods in the house that we wouldn't normally gravitate towards, but because they're there, we find ourselves eating them. You can employ those same tactics, right? Salty, sweet, crunchy, smooth, right? Or crunchy, creamy. Those are great tactics when you are kind of tempted to get into something. Be like, well, what do I really want? Do I want something salty or sweet? Do I want it creamy or crunchy? Those are kind of your go-to things. And a lot of times you'd be surprised that that will keep you out of things. When it comes to kind of shared meals, or meals eaten out or things like that, whereas like maybe there aren't options that you would prefer, like more nutrient dense options. You can work with that. And I think sometimes you're within your rights to have conversations with members of your family about food that is kept in the house. For example, I have a patient who is working very hard to avoid fast food because she's looking towards bariatric surgery, and she knows that she won't be able to eat it once she has the surgery. Like physically her body will not tolerate it, so she is wanting to kind of just wean herself off of it while she still has the stomach for it, so that she doesn't, by the time she actually has the surgery, she's not at all tempted by it, and doesn't wind up making herself sick. So she has simply asked whoever she lives with to, if they want to eat fast food, that they just eat it away from the home, that they don't bring it in the house, so that she's not tempted by the smell of it. She's not dictating where anybody goes to eat. And she is to an extent kind of refusing to go with them, but that's her prerogative. If she were in a situation where she was forced to eat something from a fast food restaurant, she would try to find something non-fried, because she knows that it, for her, is going to be the biggest hurdle. So I think, kind of I think you're within your rights to have those conversations. I also have lots of patients who are vegetarian or even vegan, and they don't want meat in their house. They're not going to tell their family that when they go out to a restaurant, they can't order something with meat. They're not going to tell their family not to eat meat at other people's houses or in other contexts when they're away from the home. But in the home, they've asked that, look, I don't want meat prepared in this home, period. If you want me to eat, go find it somewhere else. And I think, you are to an extent within your rights as a family member and as a stakeholder in your own home to make those kinds of requests. Your family may or may not be willing to work with them, but I think by and large, when you explain why something is important to you, it's important for your family to acknowledge that too. While also keeping in mind that they, are maybe adults with their own, autonomy, and they can make their own choices, that what happens in your home affects you as well. And that is very important too. So those are some options, right? So one is to kind of mediate your own behavior by kind of meeting those satisfying factors, so that's sweet, that salty, that creamy, that crunchy. Another one is just to have a very blunt and open discussion about, hey, this is what I'm working towards, this is what's really important to me. And it'd really help me a lot if you got on board, and here are the things that you can do. I don't want to dictate your life, but here are the things that you can do to help make it easier on me. And then kind of lastly, the last thing you can do is to kind of just be graceful with yourself. And I know that sometimes that is probably the hardest part at all, but like I started out saying in the very beginning of this, food does not have a moral value, right? There are foods that are more nutrient dense and foods that are less nutrient dense, but at the end of the day, I think what really sets people back is this all or nothing mentality, right? That it has to be 100% on trend, on track, or it's wrong. And if it's wrong, then just give up. It's not even worth it. Right. Like I said in the very beginning, you can have cookies every single day and still lose weight. Right. So if you're finding that a coworker is constantly bringing in cookies, well, allow yourself to have one or two. Just kind of factor that in. Maybe you cut calories somewhere else in your day. But if those are, something that you feel obligated to eat, then eat it. Or don't. But also, you're allowed to say no, right? You're allowed to tell people, and my husband is particularly guilty of this, is he will, buy things that he knows that I like, whether or not I want to eat them. And this is, this has nothing to do with, in my case anyway, it doesn't have anything to do with health or weight loss or anything like that. It's just kind of like, I didn't want that, but now it's here and I feel somewhat obligated to eat it. So kind of, again, we've had to have conversations, be like, look, I really appreciate the thought. That's so sweet of you, but I would really honestly appreciate it more if you would just ask me when you're at the store and you see it on sale, whether or not I want it. Because otherwise I feel obligated to eat it and I don't really want it, or I don't eat it and I just feel like I'm wasting food, and that doesn't feel good either. So sometimes just kind of having those blunt conversations, again, most of that always comes from a good place, but if it's not in line with your goals, then you're within your rights as somebody in that relationship to tell that person like, hey, this doesn't align with my goals right now, or quite simply, like, this doesn't having the effect that you intend for it to have. Again, you're allowed to say those things. So, and then of course, like I said, giving yourself some grace that, if you eat the ice cream or you eat the cookies or whatever it is, that's okay. That does not mean that you have completely disrupted, your progress. And honestly, it's not going to slow down your success. One or two cookies a day is not going to stop you from getting where you want to go, even if that happens every day. So I think for some people, it may be more of that mentality switch of, oh, okay, maybe I need to do a little bit more thought work in kind of what I'm allowing myself to consider permissible. And for some people, it may be more of a, well, I'm allowed to do it, but only do it in moderation. I think that those two things kind of go hand in hand, but they're also somewhat separate thought processes. So kind of giving that a little bit of a spin and kind of letting it kind of settle into your brain, and see where it fits for you. Because again, food does not have moral value. All foods, so long as you are not allergic to them, can fit into a healthy diet, and you can absolutely stay on track with your goals. The question then becomes how much and how often. And if you need personalized help and to your situation and how to help with that, I'm more than happy to see you one-on-one. I have open slots right now. I'm taking patients. So I will link my website as to where you can go for that information. I will also link a hunger scale, for you all to kind of see, okay, this is, what a visual hunger scale looks like. And again, just kind of keep in mind that all of this is about trends. It is not about once an incidental occurrences, right? Even if those occurrences are like every day for a week while you're on vacation, we are looking at broad trends here. So hopefully you all found this information helpful. If so, please hit like and subscribe. That would mean the world to me. Share it with friends and family. Sometimes these messages delivered from the mouths of a professional maybe will go over better than from you. Sometimes it's not the message, it's the messenger. So please feel free to share with friends and family if this is something that you feel like you all want to work through. And like I said, of course, I will be offering, nutrition services to anyone who is interested. Please just, fill out the form and all that good fun stuff on my website. I also have that snack list that I will link for you all. And with that, upcoming events that we have, I haven't set a date for it yet, but I will have an upcoming masterclass on good nutrition for busy people. And we also have the replay is of the meal prep workshop that we did a couple of weeks ago is now available as a digital course. So you can still purchase that. It is still available. You get all of the same materials, all of the recorded material. It was a really great workshop. It turned out to be about 3 hours of total recorded time. Um, but you can break it up in chunks and kind of do it as often as you need. You also get a pretty lengthy packet of information that kind of helps you individualize and customize and build things step by step as well. And then of course, once you have purchased that, you have access to all of my contact information, should you have questions and all of that good fun stuff. So I hope this was informative for you all, and I will see you next week. Have a great rest of your day.